What's going on? What's going on, Facebook? What is going on? All right, now we're Mhm. Now we're live on the right page. Now we are live on the right page. I'm like, what the heck just happened here? What's up? You're on the mic with Mike. I am your host, instructor Mike. We're gonna have a pretty interesting conversation today. We are going to talk about 8 correctional officers of color. They sue the county where Derek Chauvin was taken into custody and jailed. We're going to watch that. All right, so just come on in, come on in, come on in. How are you? Hope your Friday night is interesting, good, all the above, all that stuff. Yay. We are going to look at that. We're going to look at that. Trying to find that doggone video. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Oh, really? No, that's too doggone far back. Hey, what's going on? Just gone ahead and watch this, watch this, watch this. I hope the mother of Quinto. There we go. That's the video. That's the one I'm looking for. Thank you, thank you. All right, what is going on? I am Instructor Mike. You can follow me on my various social media platforms. You can follow me on Facebook at Mike Brown or Instructor Mike. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Yes, Mike said it. Subscribe to my YouTube page, Instructor Mike. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell for notifications without delay. I know some of you all are interested in concealed carry classes, all that great stuff. I do have a concealed carry class coming up. Don't forget, March 16th and the 23rd is 2 Tuesdays, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You have to attend both days. The cost of the class for that specific class, $79. $79. That fee includes gun use, ear and eye protection, ammunition, and targets. You pay $20 at the range. Requires $50 to reserve your deposit if you're interested in that. Go on ahead and text 773-372-3929. 773-372-3929. Don't forget to go on ahead and share this. Tag some people who are interested in the conversation about Derek Chauvin, George Floyd, Donnell Burns, and Angelo Quinto. We're going to talk about that tonight. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I also have other dates for my concealed carry classes. The next class is, again, March 16th and 23rd. Also have dates in April. Not going to keep this up for too long because you can always go back and watch the live. And for those, cost of that class, $99. Same information you can text right here. 773-372-3929. 773-372-3929. All right, let's go on ahead and dive right into it. All right, so we are again talking about 8 correctional officers. They said they were discriminated against. Discriminated against. I can't make this up. Not even if I tried. Not even if I tried. So let's just go on ahead and just, kind of watch the news clipping, and then we're going to go on ahead and discuss it. Here we go.
Correctional officers of color are suing Ramsey County for discrimination. An attorney representing the officers says they were prohibited from entering or working on the floor where former MPD officer Derek Chauvin was being held. The attorney spoke about the lawsuit against the county this morning.
Right now, our community, our state, and our country are grieving the senseless death of George Floyd and far too many other people of color. Many of us are using this moment to examine and take a closer look at racism in the small and large systemic.
Now, this is something that I have to say about that. I don't. All right. Let me see if I can find the rest of this video, because I know I recorded more than that in this video, and I kind of want you to be able to see some things about that video, because it was more descriptive in talking about some of the things they felt discriminated by, against, all that stuff. I can see their point of view. I don't want to say it's irrelevant or it's not relevant. But I don't think they're looking at it from the perspective, from a security perspective. I think that when you look at it, one, let's take into consideration what was going on at the time, right? You saw the events regarding George Floyd, and that's the gentleman on the left. For those of you all who haven't saw it, I mean, who in America has not seen the video go viral of Derek Chauvin, who is the officer, the former Minnesota police officer on the right, who had kneeled on the neck of George Floyd? Who had not seen that? And if you had not been paying attention, that trial, not trial, but the voir dire, the jury selection is going on right now. What's going on, George? How are you? And Rob Sheedle, how you doing? All right, so, we're looking at the jury selection, and that's going to be another conversation to discuss too. But when you look at what happened in the wake of that video, now, Mike McGrew, you did ask the question, why are they prohibited from working on the floor? When you look at the complaint, they're saying that the superintendent was saying that, it was a special assignment. Let's pull all the officers of color off of the floor for, I guess, security concerns, things like that. Now, I was a correctional officer, okay, for the state. And I will tell you this, that county corrections officers and correctional officers of the state, 9 times out of 10, when you're talking about your state correctional centers, the state correctional officers usually come from the town where that correctional center is, okay? And so, given that this is a high-profile case, given that the video is so inflammatory, okay, that it reeks disgust for police procedure, okay, the violation of police procedure, but it also would give rise to officers of color mistreating Derek Chauvin. And if I look at it from a security standpoint, the correctional center and its staff, especially the administration, they have a duty, not a request, but they have a duty to keep prisoners safe so that they can stand trial on their given court day if you're going to hold them in custody. Now, we could debate all day whether they do that, and they are good at that, right? Because not everybody's profile, not everybody's case is high profile. And of course, I'm looking at your questions as you pose them online, on Facebook. So Erica King asks, so do you think they were pulled off because they wanted to make sure nothing happened to Chauvin? Yes, Erica, I wholeheartedly believe that. And so I find it troubling when you have officers of color, right? You could have Hispanic, right? Asian, black officers making the complaint that they were pulled off because, they felt discriminated against. My thing is this, you weren't sent home, right? You didn't lose your job. You didn't lose any money. And when you go into the video even more, and it was very long, when you go into the video even more, and you listen to the complaint, all right, you listen to the complaint, you will hear that the officers were complaining that they had to not work overtime, take some time off, things of that nature. What the hell is all that about? What is all that about? I'm not really getting that, right? So you chose, because of the alleged distress that you say you were put under, because you couldn't guard this prisoner, which is the most asinine complaint I have ever heard. No one complains as a correctional officer that we don't have to guard this person. If anything, it's like, okay, where do you want me to go next? Am I still on the clock? Am I still getting paid? You didn't get taken off the clock. That would have been an issue. You didn't get, your overtime revoked, right? You didn't lose any privileges. You're claiming discrimination because you didn't get to guard the high-profile prisoner, in this case, Derek Chauvin. That's your complaint. Let's look at that for a minute. So if you are the superintendent or you are the warden of a correctional facility, and the buck stops with you, the liability stops with you, right? Shit rolls downhill, but you're definitely going to hear about it if something happens to Derek Chauvin, right? Any other prisoner, they can almost not care about. But Derek Chauvin, something happens to him, you're definitely going to hear about it, especially a high-profile case such as this. So, given the fact that this is a heavily racially sensitive case, regardless of which side you're on, right? Conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, black, white, whatever. If I have a job to make sure that Derek gets to trial, and I know that this is a heavily racially sensitive case, I am probably going to remove all the officers of color who might be enticed solely on the basis of race to make sure something happens to him in the name of alleged street justice. That's not a far gone conclusion. Let's not act as though there aren't officers who work for people in the streets, right? You hear about it all the time. Officers smuggling in narcotics, officers smuggling in cell phones, officers carrying out hits, officers delivering messages. This is not a abstract theory. This is something that does happen in the correctional setting, right? So I find that troubling, okay? Let's get to another discussion, okay? All this talk, right now, voir dire is going on for, again, Derek Chauvin, who is charged in the People versus, I would have been cool with it too. Who is now charged with the people of the state of Minnesota versus Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd, okay? And there tends to be a focus on Derek Chauvin. All the complaints about the knee on the neck, and that's inappropriate and stuff like that. And yes, back then I said, and I still agree to an extent, that the excessive knee on the neck, or the knee on the neck, looked excessive, appeared excessive, right? But I asked a question today. Could you be an impartial juror? If you're not watching the voir dire selection, you're missing out. You're really missing out on how justice is carried out, how juries are being selected. Quite frankly, I don't even know why he went with the jury trial, but it is what it is. Speaking of knees on the neck, how did we get to this national debate over the knee on the neck, given that it is a white officer and a black person, and miss this, that occurred in 2017? The gentleman on the right, his name is Donnell Burns, right? Donnell Burns, okay? Now, the gentleman on the left, his name is Adrian Santos. Now, I'm going to read this from a 2018 paper, right, in the Chicago Tribune, okay? Former security guard under investigation resigns from his suburban job, okay? Actually, that's not the ad. I should have had the other one up. Let's get to it. It's going to be the same article, similar article. But we're going to go ahead and talk about that. I think that, no, that might be that's the one. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Former security guard under investigation resigns from his suburban police job. A South Suburban police officer has quit the force amid a criminal investigation stemming from his previous job as a security officer. Adrian Santos III, pictured on the left, 34 years old, resigned from his position as a police officer. His departure comes on the heels of a Tribune story that detailed how Santos, a Walmart security guard, arrested a suspected shoplifter who ended up dying as he was taken into custody. The story revealed that Santos allegedly provided incorrect information about his law enforcement credentials to the Chicago police investigating the 2017 death. Specifically, Santos told Chicago police officers that he was a deputy for the Lake County, Indiana Sheriff's Department even though he had been fired for 2 years earlier after an arrest on a domestic violence charge in Hammond, according to law enforcement documents. Santos was working as an armed security officer for a security firm at the time of the deadly arrest that prompted a separate Chicago police probe. The police investigation wrapped up, and now the Cook County State's Attorney's Office is reviewing the case to determine whether to file criminal charges. The prosecutor declined to comment, citing the ongoing investigation. In the aftermath of the shoplifting suspect dying in the custody of Walmart security and the resulting scrutiny over comments Santos made to investigating officers, it raised concerns about how that security firm had record-keeping violations. Long and short of it, the issue was that, here we go, on July 25th, Santos was working security at a Walmart in the Northwest Side's Hermosa neighborhood, where he crossed paths with shoplifting suspect Donnell Burns, pictured on the right, age 23. Santos and other guards detained Burns outside of the Walmart. Burns died of asphyxia during the restraint and psychological stress after he struggled with Santos, who kneed him in the neck and was face down on the pavement. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office ruled that his death was a homicide, finding that PCP and heart abnormalities contributed to his death. Right? The security firm fired Santos in December after Burns' death and upon learning of Santos' former disciplinary history. Okay? So, long and short of it, we're so busy focused on this guy, and Erica, you are exactly correct. We're so busy focusing on this guy, which we're not to say that this should not be a subject of focus. It should definitely be a subject of focus. After all, a death happened, and it's definitely worth investigating. But if we're talking about knees on the neck, what about this? Right? You hear folks saying Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. Does not Donnell's life matter too? What's the one thing that George Floyd and Donnell Burns allegedly or factually had in common, according to reports? That both of them had narcotics, and that narcotics and body or medical problems attributed along with the knee that could have exacerbated the problems, contributed to the death. Speaking of which, there's another case out of California. Navy vet died after California police knelt on his neck for nearly 5 minutes, the family alleges. The family of a Navy veteran who called police while he was struggling with a mental health crisis is alleging that officers used excessive force that led to his death and is suing the city of Antioch, California for damages. The sister of Angelo, Quinto, called police on December 23rd after noticing her brother had been exhibiting signs of mental distress. According to a complaint filed against the city last week by his mother, Maria Quintos Collins, Quintos had been exhibiting signs of anxiety, depression, and paranoia in the month prior to his death. Okay, they're saying that when the police arrived, Quinto was being held on the floor by his mother and was beginning to calm down. But the two officers, who were not identified, took Quinto from his mother's arms as he allegedly said, "Please don't kill me," according to the suit. The lawsuit claims the two officers then put Quinto down on his stomach with his legs crossed behind him. That is a law enforcement procedure. And one officer allegedly placed his knee on Quinto's neck. And at this point, Quinto started bleeding from his mouth, the lawsuit said. At no point in time while being restrained did Mr. Quinto physically resist or arrest. After being restrained for almost 5 minutes, he became lifeless. So why are we focusing just on Derek Chauvin and not Adrian Santos and the officers in this case? Is it that the media or the politicians, they love it when it's black versus white? Did not the lives of those other people matter too? And I'm not saying the police were right or wrong. I wasn't there. I have to look at the evidence, not the stuff that's put out there, because I have to agree. When I saw that George Floyd video, yeah, I was fucked up. I was mad. I'm not going to lie. But one thing that I was listening to in the voir dire selection, the attorneys for both the state of Minnesota and for the defendant, Derek Chauvin, asked the question, can you be an independent juror who didn't see the video, right? But can you set aside your opinions and look at more evidence, more video? Yeah, you saw the ending, but can you look at the beginning? Because it only seems that the media and the politicians inflame the passions of already existing beliefs to their ends, be it viewership, be it votes. What do we do? What do we do? I don't know. I just had the mom of Donnell Burns contact me on a previous page and say, hey, thanks for bringing, you said you never had to use a knee on the neck. I get it. Now, there are some defensive tactics positions that require vasoconstriction, stuff like that, things on the neck, right? It's mild, right? In certain cases, when deadly force is authorized, that could be the case. I don't know. But this case in Derek Chauvin's trial will definitely be worth seeing, worth viewing. It'll definitely be worth seeing and worth viewing. I hope you've been watching voir dire. I hope you've been watching that, because jury selection, it's important to, take into consideration those statements that the attorneys have, and they have to make them over and over and over again, because you're asking, in essence, kind of the same line of questioning with certain deviances, depending upon what juror you have sitting before you, unless they were dismissed for cause by the judge before they even sat in the seat, It's amazing. It's amazing how we say that, George Floyd's life mattered, and the family celebrated today because, they got a $27 million settlement. Settlements are not an admission of guilt. It's just the ending of a civil case, right? In fact, the $27 million, I believe, is more than what Breonna Taylor's family got, right? Definitely more than what Laquan McDonald's family got, right? As Frank McFarland on Facebook says, Mike, they don't want us to get along. If we all got along, we could call them out on their shit. That's exactly correct. Thomas Crawley says the only way you can find an unbiased jury is to ship them from a third world country. Ooh, this is going to be a hard case. I don't even know why Derek even went with a jury trial. I just don't know. I mean, how do you find an impartial? I mean, you can't even argue change of venue, because who hasn't seen it, right? Who hasn't seen it? So how do you get a fair and impartial jury? And then listening to the judge doesn't seem like he has a fair and impartial judge either. I just don't know. You said, Mike McGrew, you asked a question. Do they teach that in the academy? The knee to the neck. There is a position where when you're handcuffing, especially PPCT, I'm a former PPCT instructor, where you are grabbing the arm and you're trapping it in between your thighs, right? Now, during that, you're not kneeling on their neck or on their back, but I want to tell you this. There is no real one standard when it comes down to defensive tactics training. That's a very, very, very good question, Mike. There is no one defensive tactic standard. There is the use of force continuum, right? There is definitely the use of force continuum. You have your verbal, you have your presence and your verbal, and then you have your passive, your active, your aggressive, and then your deadly force. Okay, those are typically the use of force continuums. For every and then there's this, and for every this, and then there's this, and then for every this, and then there's this, right? So you got that continuum, right? But different departments have different standards that they use, right? Some are accrediting bodies or accredited bodies by accrediting bodies, right? So it's so many doggone standards out there. So many, right? Illinois has one standard. California has one standard. So it's just so many, given the dynamics of who you're policing and what you're dealing with. It's so many. It really is. So I can't state for certain if there isn't a knee to the neck, right? Because some may augment their policies to allow certain things, right? Now you have certain police officers saying you can't do anything at the neck, which I think is stupid, because if deadly force is authorized, I don't care if policy says I can't do it. If I'm in a situation where I have no other choice and deadly force is authorized and I don't have access to any of my other weapons or tools and that neck is exposed and deadly force is authorized, oh, I'm going for that neck. I don't care if I have to do this, throat punch, stab with a pin, I'm going for that neck. Screw the public and what they think. I'm trying to survive. And see, that's the thing, right? We have the Illinois legislature, both House and Senate, right? And according to Rob Sheedle, you said it's taught in Minnesota's Police Academy training. I'm sure that will come out, right? Because if that does come out, then it's going to fall into the department, right? We'll have to see. But I look at Illinois and their House Bill 3653, right? The police reform bill, right? You got all these legislative things that have come out that are saying what police can do or must do differently, what departments can do or must do differently. But they're not changing the risk of the officers who take the job. And so it's like, how do you want officers to get more training? How do you want officers to be smarter when you're not changing the risk that allows maybe your smarter folks to become police officers? It's a very valid question. It's a very valid question. In the state of Illinois, you have the percentage that's needed to pass the state exam being very low, 66%. And so you'll ask yourself the question, well, why so low? I knew there were some dumb cops out there. Well, you can call them dumb if you want to. I've worked with some smarter ones. I've worked with some what the fucks, right? But if you're not changing the risk, you won't get the intellect. Why would you go be the police and risk your life for your common man, for a stranger, when you can make twice as much doing something that is less violent? Why would you do that? And so you're raising the standard, but you're not changing the risk. Licensed professionals, people with higher standards, your doctors, your lawyers, right? Lawyers don't have to take on every client, except if you work in the public field, maybe, right? Doctors don't have to take on every client, so to speak. Or if they take on every client, they don't have to do everything the client asks them. Why? Because they have a license to maintain. They can reserve the right to refuse service, and often they do. Franklin McLeod asked the question, if they take away qualified immunity from the police officers, what does that mean for civilians? That means if I am not immune from the actions that I am going to take or may need to take under the color of the law, that could go bad. What that could mean for civilians is you're left to your own devices. You're left to fend for yourself. Because then I am going to make the command decision against policy to slow it down and not respond so fast. Why? Because my death could be behind that door, right? My career could be behind that door. And yes, I did respond and get there, but I decide what I do on the scene. Why? Because I know if I do this, my mere presence is already a threat. Especially if you're a white person serving in a municipality where there's a lot of black folks or other folks that hate you. right? And so they're not going to take the risk. They're not going to take the risk. Now, and I think law enforcement is one of the only professions that you don't have to do continuing education. I will sit here and tell you this. Continuing education is important. As a former police trainer, I love continuing education. And it is very, very important to have continuing education. But I will tell you this. Continuing education without changing the risk does what? What does it do? Continuing education without changing the risk. What does it do? You can require me to be smart all you want. If you don't change the risk, what is it going to do? And so you got to ask yourself, if the standard had been so high for it to then be low, what was the difference? Well, it was high, it was high, it was so high, right? Great. Well, it's low now. Why? Well, because we tried recruiting. We tried reaching out. We tried going to the colleges. We tried going to the universities. We tried reaching out. But we had a very low turnout. Because why would people risk their lives to just get this little bitty change? You really got to want to serve the public. Or find something cool in law enforcement that gets you to block out the fact that you could die on this call. You really got to not care about your life at that moment. Not do things recklessly, right? But really not care about the fact that you could lose your life. I don't know. Yeah, continuing education elevates your level of skill. Sure, Mike. But I don't know if have you ever been in service with some of these police officers? Have you ever tried to have a legal conversation? Now I'm going to answer that question, Frank. Have you ever tried to have a legal conversation, an understanding of the concepts of Graham versus Connor, Tennessee versus Gardner, hell, Miranda versus Arizona, Terry versus Ohio, right? Rob Sheetal, you wanted body cam footage until you saw it. Then when you saw it, now you don't want it because it's showing too much. Oh, right? I was wearing body cameras before it was even cool. Right? Now, Frank McFarland, you asked the question, would you be a cop nowadays? Fuck no. Unless they licensed. Boy, if they licensed the police, sign me back up. Sign me back up. Because as a licensed professional, hell, I'll get the high insurance. I don't care, right? And I'll make sure I get that top of the line insurance. Why do I want to get that top of the line insurance? Because I want to make sure that the insurance company is so good they can afford to drop me if I'm out there being reckless. So that means the decision isn't with the department. Because when it was with the department and you guys were insured, well, then you could command. Why? Because you're taking all the risk. But if I'm insured and licensed, that means I'm taking the risk, which means I definitely have command and control over what I do. Now, you can give me the order, and I can humbly say with all due respect, no. Because boots on the ground sees that this is going to go bad. And as a licensed professional, I reserve the right, like other licensed professionals, to refuse service. Well, I need help. I know, I see, but if I intervene, I'm taking a huge risk. So I'm going to coach you. Hey, duck, run, riska, raska, fraska, fraska, sis, boom, ba, Bugs Bunny, rah, rah, rah. Yes, I'm going to coach you. Right, duck, left, ABA, CABB, get over here. I'm just going to coach you to safety. And then when it's done, take a report on what I observed. Now, do you think officers having insurance puts them at risk for faulty claims? Shit. That's a great question, Erica. Guess what? If I got a body camera and it's activated all the time, you can file a claim all you want to. Guess what the insurance is going to ask for? Do you have that body camera? Yep. Okay, cool. Let's review the footage. Did he respond? Yes. When he got there, did he give some kind of intervention? Yes. Did he try to assist you? Yes. Was it the assistance that you wanted? No. Well, he's not required to give you the assistance that you wanted because self-protection under the public duty doctrine. If you want protection, you have to protect yourself. Warren versus District of Columbia, Castle Rock versus Gonzalez. The police don't have a duty to protect you, the specific individual. So how could you lodge a claim at law or have a case at law when you don't have a cause of action? You don't have a cause of action. It says it in case law under the doctrine of stare decisis, right? I don't have a duty to you. I have a duty to the public at large. I responded, I coached you, I observed, and I wrote a report. I take on the risk when I have insurance. And my insurance definitely looking for a reason not to pay. Not to pay out. Oh, they're going to do a deeper investigation than the department ever would. Because they don't want to pay out that money. You wanted it. You asked for it. Officers, if you are watching, let them eat cake. Speaking of which, I'm a member of the International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association. It's a very sad day. I just found out that Chicago Heights Police just lost a good officer, Gary Hibbs, star number 102. He lost his life today. He lost his life today because he suffered a heart attack from fighting a domestic battery suspect. He tried to take the guy into custody from what I'm hearing and lost his life. He went into a medical problem. I believe it was a cardiac problem, and ended up going to the hospital where he then succumbed from his injuries sustained in that. I remember going to the ILETA conference with him, Chief Brian Smith, George Hillman, and a couple other folks. We went to the ILETA conference in St. Louis. I remember him. He was teaching with Brian Smith at the Metropolitan Police Self-Defense Institute. He's a range master, firearms instructor, SWAT operator, SWAT leader, actually, with the South Suburban Emergency Response Team. And from all accounts, a great guy. A great guy. And he lost his life. Domestic battery call. Trying to help someone else against someone alleged to have caused bodily harm against another person. This is the risk. This is the risk that comes with the job. You got so many people that got negative things to say about the police, and don't get me wrong, the police is in need of reform, but so is the community too. These are people who are not forced to become police officers. These are people who sign up for the job. And regardless of whatever kind of isms you can allege that they have and or display, we are not exempt from those same isms that we display amongst each other. But when you call 911 and you're looking for somebody to respond to your place, and he responds with the intention to only help, only to lose his life. Can we say that something in this situation could have perhaps been done differently? Could we say something in that situation perhaps could have been done differently? Could we say something in that situation perhaps been done differently? But look at a person like this and say, you know what? Let's not condemn them all. Let's not condemn them all. Let's have an honest conversation that needs to occur between the community, within the community, and in the police department too. Because when the shit hits the fan, regardless of what side you're on, when things happen, tragedy begins to galvanize us. 9/11, we all found out that we're vulnerable, that we're Americans. This past pandemic, in the beginning, everybody is in one accord. Let's stay together. We're all in. When you call 911 and you have the inability to defend yourself, just hope you have a person, honorable, respectful, and by all accounts, a nice guy like Gary Hibbs, star 102 of the Chicago Heights Police Department, who lost his life today and made the ultimate sacrifice because someone called 911 and wanted someone to help them ward off a person who was alleged to try to harm them. Chicago Heights Police just lost a fantastic person. And I don't care what you say about me being what you allege as a police apologist or whatever, unless you've walked in the shoes of people who volunteer to deal with your shit that you can't handle yourself, you will never know. You will never know what it's like to be loved and be missed and be unappreciated. Thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Gary Hibbs and the Chicago Heights, Illinois Police Department. This is Instructor Mike, and you've been trained. Follow me on Facebook at Mike Brown or Instructor Mike. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Yes Mike Said It. Subscribe to my YouTube page, Instructor Mike. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell for notifications. You all stay safe.